Developing the next generation of cattle producers is critical to the long-term viability of the beef industry. In South Dakota, the Cattlemen's Foundation recognized a need to encourage young producers who have an interest in the cattle feeding sector. Cattleman to Cattleman's Kevin Auctioner has the story.
The South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation was formed as a way to ensure the long-term viability of South Dakota's beef industry.
Well, the purpose of the South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation is first and foremost to promote the industry and the mission of our ranchers and producers across the state of South Dakota.
Keeping the industry viable is critical not only locally for producers, but as we take a look at global beef production and the demand for our product, it's really important to have that future secured. So the mission of the foundation is really twofold, both being in education. Educating the consumer that we can have a discussion here locally with, as well as educating the next generation of beef producers in our state. And really both of those metrics we feel like are going to help ensure the viability of our industry long term. We've also have a very vibrant education committee. Those folks, we provide 5 scholarships annually, totaling $15,000 for local students. And then a new component to our education committee is the Fed Cattle Challenge, in which high school and college age students are able to actually physically own cattle in a feed yard and then compete in an educational opportunity for a cash award in that as well.
Starting the Fed Cattle Challenge was not only a way to introduce the next generation of cattle producers to the science and economics of finishing cattle through hands-on participation, but also to help build a stronger fed cattle industry in South Dakota.
The percentage of cattle that are raised in South Dakota versus the ones that are fed here seems to be disproportionately low. If we want to change that, if we want to change that culture and the economic impact that it has in South Dakota, we have to start with better training and creating a culture where that becomes a part of our knowledge base and something that we learn at an early age.
We really want to build up that feeding industry in the state of South Dakota, and it's a need that I think the industry in our state has identified and been working on, but it's a little bit challenging. We have some really good things going on in our state that are favorable to cattle feeding, in that we have a relatively low corn basis. We've got farmer feeders who have basically a captive feed supply, and they need to market that feed through cattle. And so in order to do that, we need people who understand the cattle business end of it so that they can take that pen of cattle, get them to gain and grow and finish and be marketable at the end point. And at the same point in time, we want them to be profitable so they can stay in the business, right? And so we thought that this was a really great way to do that.
I think the next generation is obviously very important in South Dakota because we are so sparsely populated outside of 3 or 4 metro areas. And I use the metro area term pretty loosely. And so to keep our industry vibrant and to keep our industry viable in South Dakota is obviously the most important thing to cattle production, but we also really see it as a huge benefit to community survival in a very rural state.
Participants in the Fed Cattle Challenge had ownership of 3 head of cattle and were given an in-depth look at all aspects of the cattle feeding industry.
We wanted to be able to give young people the experience of looking at what it takes to really run a feed yard and all of the things that they have to take into consideration when you're doing that, because we really want to generate the next generation of feedlot owners and operators, because when you look at the people who are willing to do that, I think that pool is relatively small. And then the knowledge, where do they get that really to start into it? And so all of the students that were in the program owned 3 head of cattle in that particular feedlot pen. And so then they got the billing information every couple of weeks to look at and see, this is what it really takes to own these cattle, and these are the management things that we have to think about. You know, we've had students who have maybe a little bit of cow-calf experience or maybe some really limited feeding experience. And so this was able to really give them a broader picture of what the industry looks like. And I think that that was extremely valuable to them. And again, having that experience on their resume for those feedlot owners and operators as they go looking for help, I think will be really a great thing for those students.
At the conclusion of the program, awards were given to the top 4 participants during the South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation Primetime Gala. Interest from the industry has been positive and will keep the program going strong.
The response to the project has been fantastic, and we asked those students when they were done to give us a little bit of feedback to see if we needed to change direction a little bit or what things that we could refine and do better. And the feedback was just really excellent, that they thought that having that money up front and that stake in the game really made it very real for them. And so that was a really positive thing. And our response by the feedlot owners and managers in the state has also been fantastic. They love to see that there's students who are taking an interest, who are going to have some real world experience, who are going to have a little bit better knowledge of, oh wow, this is what it takes to manage all of that.
It's great that there's this much excitement and enthusiasm in year 5, but I know that we're building a longer legacy behind this, something that we see multi-generation in the future.
From South Dakota, I'm Kevin Ochsner, reporting for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.